PKK, the Kurdish militant rebel group that has caused huge mayhem in Turkey over the last, since 1984, partly in response to Turkey's actions in sometimes quietly hosting Muslim brothers who the Syrians didn't like, and also building huge dams on the Tigris-Euphrates river system, which deprives Syria of much-needed water. So those two states had a long time, very difficult relations, of course. Turkey, NATO members, Syria, usually pretty much in the Soviet bloc, a security threat for Turkey. And with Iraq, a bit different, better relations with Baghdad historically, but due to the way Saddam lost control of his country during the 1990s and the spread of Kurdish well, the establishment of the Kurdistan government, regional government, and the ability of the PKK to easily base itself in those areas became a security threat for Turkey as well. So there was an opportunity. Turkey, when it came to the to our present period that we're going to discuss, Turkey had both an opportunity, 45 million consumers in Iraq and Syria, and also the memory of a need to close down that security threat. So let's look at AKP, the government, the current government of Turkey's policy today, which has attracted a lot of attention. People have thought that, is Turkey taking, is Turkey trying to either take over the Middle East, or is it trying to become part of the Middle East? And one reason that you can't blame AKP for what's going on today is you just look at the way Turkey's changed since the end of the Cold War. Turkey has readjusted its relationships with all its neighbors, only 3 or 4 of whom happen to be Muslim. Actually, the chief beneficiary of Turkey's zero-problem recalibration of its foreign policy has been the trade relationships with Russia, and indeed, in relative terms, with Greece, 2 non-Middle Eastern countries, I think will agree. And when you look at who thought up this policy, it's not AKP. It's Turgut Özal is the first person to break the taboos, as the former president Süleyman Demirel used to say. Turgut Özal could take a plane off, but he didn't know how to land it, and that's quite true. Turkey opened the way, but didn't know really where to go. The first person to think more structured, in a more structured way about what Turkey could do in the region was Ismail Cem, the foreign minister between 1997 and 2002. In fact, most of the policies we're seeing today in the region have their origins with Mr. Cem, who initiated things like relationships with the Organization of Islamic Conference and trying to be part of them. In fact, it was under his custodianship that Turkey made its first attempt to become Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Conference. He had a very charming way of trying to show people that Turkey was about peace in the region. He went to the West Bank and Israel with his Greek counterpart, George Papandreou, now Prime Minister, to show that, look, we could normalize after decades of real hostility. It can be done. This is how it is. But just as a note, when you go to Ankara now, it's an extraordinary change. Interviews with Turkish officials used to be full of angry victimhood and accusations. Now, when you talk about the region, lots of positive ideas and a very constructive approach. And that's a psychological change. And it's been, as I said, pre-AKP. However, the AKP has made this new policy its own. And there are 3 main personalities to watch here. The President Gül, who is obviously used to be Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, but now the President, who has a kind of overall approach, and he tries to give a voice to what Turkey is doing in a way that Western powers can find very embraceable. Then you have Prime Minister Erdogan, who's gutsy. He's got a terrible temper. He rightly views himself as the ruler of Turkey, and he's giving voice to decades of frustration about Western policies in the region. And he comes out with the most extraordinarily flamboyant declarations, especially when visiting places like Sudan and Iran. He is the person who attracts a lot of attention in the Arab street, for instance, for his condemnations of Israeli behavior, and also in the Turkish press for his equally self-defeating comments, for instance, about expelling Armenian guest workers and so forth. But he speaks from the heart. This can be a disadvantage, as I've just mentioned, in the sense that it undermines his traditional allies' confidence in Turkey. On the other hand, when he says something to people, most people believe it, because he is what he is. He says he is what he is, and he is what he is. If he generally, when he commits to something, it holds. So what did AK Party do? Just to prove once again that they are not inherently looking to create an Islamist bloc, the first 3 years of AK Party rule, 2002, 2005, were all about building ties to Europe, winning the negotiations with the EU to join the EU. At the same time, Turkey was, Prime Minister Erdogan was so close mentally to the United States that he visited the White House before he even became Prime Minister. However, both the EU and the US relationship broke down. The US relationship broke down over Washington's insistence against all logic and its own interests in attacking and destroying Saddam Hussein's government in Iraq. And the Turkish parliament, arguably against the wishes of the AKP leadership, but possibly not, no one quite knows, but they voted against helping the United States move troops into northern Iraq for the war, and that made Washington extremely angry and alienated the Pentagon, and the next 4 years were pretty grim between Turkey and the US. Something different happened with Europe, and the book has not yet been written about exactly what happened, but as it became clear that Turkey was serious about getting those EU negotiations going, two separate things happened, somewhat interconnected. First of all, Turkey had changed 30 years of policies on Cyprus and said, okay, the Turkish Cypriots can go into the EU with the Greek Cypriots, and that's going to be how we will work in the future. And the Greek Cypriots, in a referendum just before Cyprus was going to join the EU, said no. The EU said, oh, well, you can join anyway. And the Greek Cypriots immediately started using their membership of the EU to close down the EU-Turkey relationship until such time as Turkey would give in to its demands. Turkey did not give in to its demands, and as a result, we have a situation where the EU-Turkey relationship is basically moving from the refrigerator to the deep freeze. There are only 4 negotiating chapters left to open. They're very difficult chapters. 18 of the 35 chapters with the EU are closed by the Cyprus dispute. That's a topic for another talk, perhaps, but anyway. At the same time, and perhaps one of the reasons that Europe was so passive about what happened on Cyprus is that you had public opinion in Germany and France turning against Turkey, and populist politicians taking advantage of that, especially Nicolas Sarkozy, the President of France, and Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. But not only them. Foreign Minister of Netherlands is very similar. We've had Anders Fogh Rasmussen when he was in charge of Denmark, and Austrian leaders have also used the EU-Turkey relationship as a populist method to get votes among a population scared about immigrants, Islam, and loss of jobs. Attacking a long-term relationship which no one knows how it will end. I've lived in Turkey 23 years. EU membership has always been 10 years away. No one has ever known whether Turkey will really sign those treaties if and when they get all the criteria filled. But anyway, it'll not be this generation of politicians who deal with this question, either in Europe or Turkey.